So there is Achichu Aleid, what we said, that the sages laugh at him. In a sense, they didn't accept it in Beit HaMidrash. They said, Lav de lo tasur doraitahi, which means the Torah said, you should follow what the sages tell you. You should not deviate from what the sages tell you. So there, why do I care if it's the love of Shatnez or other reason? If the sages put a decree, it's decree. So, the truth is that all this idea of the sages can say whatever it is, the issue, the right, the biblical prohibition, it's a violation of any biblical law. Amar Rav Kahana, Rabba, Gavra Rabba Amar Milta, Lo Tachichu Alei. So he said that when someone in that level, a great person, says something, you should not laugh. So it's not just you should not laugh at him. Rashi explained, אם הוא סבור דאפילו אמרו לו דבר תורה והוא עומד בפני הכבוד יעבור לה והנה מדאורייתא היא. So basically, in a very general statement, when someone, a great Torah scholar, said something, you should not laugh at this, because sometimes it's your fault, you don't fully understand what he meant, but it's something that you need to search deeply. But it's not that he is not, he makes something that it's foolish, that you can laugh at. So that's the idea. Kol mile de Rabbanan asmechinu alav de lo tasur. For the rabbis based their authority for all the rabbinic acts, for the negative commandment we should not deviate. Umishom kvodo shau Rabbanan. So nevertheless the rabbis allow rabbinic decree to waive for the human dignity. So you see, in one hand you have the idea of Chilul Hashem, the desecration of God's name. On the other hand you have the human dignity. So you have the idea of Lo Tasur, you should not deviate, which means that all the idea that the rabbinic decree, it's when it's in the biblical law, so we can say that it's in a way the rabbinic decree, it's annul, but it's not really annul. It means it's you call it the word lo doche, ein lo tasur aval lo doche, which means, take for example the idea of kilaim. We explained earlier that it's a prohibition of wool and linen. So that's basically is rabbinic. What does that mean? The Torah said you should not have a wool and linen, but if someone have a regular garments and then he put one line of wool, etc., so now he walk in the market. So you have the concept that's called lo tasur, which means the rabbi said you don't need to take it off. He goes home, and then if he is not taking it off, he violated rabbinic law. But up to that point, we leave it. An example. So here is an example. They said, Tachma, והתעלמת מהם, this is a Gemarah in Bava Metzia, famous, פעמים שאתה מתעלם מהם ופעמים שאין אתה מתעלם מהם. הכיצד? So again, you have a wool and linen, and they use the word is a shua tuz venuz, which means that you can put together all these pieces of wool and linen together. So you have a regular garment. Let's say that you just wearing a regular garment, and now you put one opposite of, for example, it's wool and you put linen, and vice versa. So they said veit alamta doesn't mean that you should hide from them. It's a certain situation that we say that you should not disregard it. So when it is, he said hakitzad im haya kohen bebet hakvarot. When you time that you hide and time that you not hide. So example is if a kohen he is now passing out, not inside, but he's passing around the cemetery. Now, here's the problem. He sees inside the cemetery, for example, his neighbor's horse, his neighbor's donkey. He sees something that let's use our language, you see a bicycle of the neighbor's child in a cemetery. The child is looking for that bicycle for a long time. He's a Kohen, he's not allowed to enter the cemetery, but he sees that bicycle in the cemetery. So what should he do now? So, אם היה כהן והוא בבית הקברות, if he's a Kohen and the lost object he signed was in a cemetery, then we said והתעלמת, the Kohen is hide from him, he's not picking it up, right? He can go home. Why? Because the Torah said lo yitama. So the same idea that the Kohen is forbidden to have any contamination in the cemetery, that's v'italamta. He doesn't have the din of Hashavat Avedah, doesn't have the obligation of returning a lost item. Another example, O haya zaken ve'ena lefi kvodo. If it's an elderly person or elderly scholar, sometimes it's not necessarily scholar, just an elderly person, and it's not for his dignity. For example, you see a donkey, and it's not appropriate for him to deal with that. So the Gemarah explained in Bava Metzia that, for example, if he is not going for his own donkey, if he lose, so and if you see donkey that belongs to someone else, he doesn't have the obligation, which means that he doesn't have the obligation to take something that belongs to his neighbor and return it if he will not do it for himself, because it's zaken ve'ena lefi kvodo, it's a dignity of elderly person. Or שהייתה מלאכתו מרובה משל חברו. So, for example, the finder works is greater than the value of the friend's objects. So, let's give some word of introduction. For example, today, you don't see the whole idea of kavod, of honor. Why, the rabbi said, why you don't see kingdom today? With all due respect of different great, presidents of country and prime ministers, it's not the same level of kavod, of dignity that we used to have in the past. So the rabbis call it Yeridat HaDorot. The generations go down in many areas. In the past, they knew that when I'm honoring a king or I'm honoring a scholar, it's not honoring him, it's honoring myself. What does that mean, honoring myself? Because if the elderly person will take the donkey, if you see a very important person does something that it's not proper for him, is not in our modern mindset that it's inappropriate for him. It's inappropriate for me to let him do that. It's like it's hurting my own dignity if I allow such a thing to do. That's the idea of zaken and elderly ve'ena lefi kvodo. It's not for his dignity. Because if you carry this donkey, it's called my bizayon, it's my embarrassment. So here is the idea that we see in many places. You see, for example, in the Tractate Bava Metzia in 84, it's a big discussion of Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, and one was so angry, so he says certain words, and Reish Lakish passed, and then Rabbi Yochanan couldn't take it, and he died. So what's the idea? The idea is that according to the din, according to the law, he is not deserved to live. It means it's like you see many times in the Talmud, Natan bo enav ve'asar bo gal shel atzamot, which means that he did something, he says something that it's really deserves something. When we talk about some definition of kavod Torah and honor of the Torah, it's something that the whole world created for that honor. So it's a very high level of kavod. We don't see it much in nowadays, unfortunately, but that's the idea of zaken ve'ena lefi kvodo. Or when it's come to returning a lost item, so they said melacha merba mishel chavero. You find animals that belong to someone else. Now what's the problem? The problem is not just returning it. Meanwhile, it stay by you. You need to feed them animals. So it's not just the idea of returning the lost item. You now start losing money because you need to feed the animals, and there's a big discussion if it's a 30 days, if it's a 12 months. It's not our discussion, but imagine a situation that if you have someone who's expert in diamonds, and out of his work, it's a lot of money, and he found now, let's say, a pen, expensive pen, the pen worth, let's say, $50, but the hourly work of that person who deals with diamonds is like $250. So what are you expecting him? To take away an hour of work, to travel to the person that you see the pen sign, for example. So that's called melachto meruba mishel chavero. The finer work is greater the value than the finer's friends. So right? So the big question is you need to pick it up. So for example, if elderly person, his honor is supersedes more than the returning the lost. That's what the Torah אומרת, is גזירת הכתוב. That's the word the Torah said. Amai, why is so? למה אין חוכמה ואין תבונה ואין ניצל נגד השם. Let's say that there is no value to wisdom or understanding or counsel and weights against the honors of God. Shanehatam here is different. Why? They use the word הכתיב והתעלמת מהם. Since written you should hide from them. So the Torah itself provides the mitzvah of returning a lost object that may be aside for the sake of human dignity. So now the big question is veligmar minei. But let us drive from here. If we put a generalization from the verse that human dignity it's override the Torah prohibition, so why you don't do that here? Isua mimamona lo kaiminan. Why? The big question is why we don't say that it's like a binyan av, which means since you build this idea that money, you don't lose other money and you not hurt his dignity. For example, you're wearing shatnez, you ask him to be half naked in the market. So they said any itzah neged Hashem is no anything can say. So we cannot drive the law regarding to Torah prohibition, law regarding to monetary matters. So we have to run. So let's finish the sugya. Tashma. Now another braita. Berakhot ma Talmud lomar. So that's Gemarah in Megillah. We study also Megillah. So let's just go for a second to that sugya. The Torah said in Parashat Naso about Nezirite. So if a person accepts upon himself a Nazirut, he accepts and he is now a Nazir for a certain time or it's not specified. So basically the Torah said that he is forbidden to be contaminated to a dead body. And the Torah used the word al-kol for all of years, including the 7 immediate family, he cannot contaminate it. And the Torah added to that and it said, la'aviv u'li'imo u'la'achoto, etc. So it's they give the specification. Why? So there's a reason for that. So for his father, it's a reason. Why it's the reason? So they said that if he is a Nazir, if he is a Nazirite, and he walking on the street and he see a met mitzvah, so what do you think? Since the Torah said that he cannot contaminate with anything, so the Torah want to tell us le'aviv, to his father, he cannot be contaminated. But if he's a met mitzvah, if he's a dead body in a field and no one to take care of, so even he's a Nazirite, he has to take care of it. And then it's written le'imo, to his mother. Why? If he's a Kohen and Nazir, that there's 2 reasons for him not to touch a dead body. He is a Kohen and he's Nazir. So the drasha here is, they said, lo yitama, he should not contaminate it, which means to his mother he cannot contaminate it. However, if he is in the field again and he's a met mitzvah, he should contaminate it. So if you have now the further one, if you have Kohen Gadol and Nazir, you have a high priest and he's also Nazirite. So it's called Tarte lechumra. It's the 2 things that they use the word le'achiv, to his brother. To his brother he cannot do it, but for Mev Mitzvah he can do that even he's a Kohen Gadol Nazir. So what about la'achoto, the last one left? What do you learn from that? So now we're going to the idea of la'achoto. Tashma, come and hear the braita. La'achoto ma Talmud lomar. When the verse states concerning Nazir that he should not contaminate himself with truma for his father and his mother, for his brother or for his sister. So far we understand for others, but what about for his sister? So here's the Rasha, they explain it. הרי שהיה הולך לשחוט את פסחו ולמול את בנו ושמע שמת לא מת. There is a biblical commandment that we should sacrifice the Passover offering. So if he is on his way, have a dead body, so the big question is, if he fulfill this mitzvah of taking care of the dead body, you have the scale in one hand to do the mitzvah of taking care of the dead body, or the other biblical commandment to slaughter the Passover offering, or the brit milah, the circumcision, that it's mitzvah taseh, that it's a positive commandment. So it's a concept that the school lo mekayem mitzvah taseh, did not fulfill the positive commandment, and it's a kol anush kareh. The Torah said that all should be cut off. So in a sense, aseh is more, aseh yoter chamur, aseh is more important, more stringent. So what's the problem? If it's a brit milah, you have a time limitations. It has to be at 8 days. So what's the issue here? So some of the Rishonim said that the problem here, the Torah said that Arel lo yochal bo, that some was not circumcised cannot eat the Korban Pesach. So if he has a child that is not circumcised, he's not allowed to involve with Korban Pesach because he has in his midst a Arel. So therefore you learn ולאח אותו ושמע שמת לא מת יכול ויחזור ויטמא אמרת לא יטמא. Okay, so that's the idea that you learn ולאח אותו because he goes to bring Korban Pesach. So he said that you should counter and said he should not contaminate himself. יכול כשם שאינו מטמא להם כך אינו מטמא למת מצווה תלמוד לומר לאחותו. So maybe you said the same ways that he's not contaminating himself with with them, so it close relatives. So the same apply to someone who's a unattended corpse, which means that he's a dead body, is no one else to take care. תלמוד לומר ואחותו לאחותו הוא לא מטמא. So it's basically to his sister he cannot be contaminated, but אבל מטמא הוא למת מצווה. That's the drasha from the word לאחותו, that he can take care of מת מצווה of unattended corpse, which means במקום שיש חילול השם of is a desecration of God's name, so it was the met mitzvah. The Torah said you should not contaminate. So they said he amai leima en chokhma ve'en tvuna ve'en yetzah le'ing l'Shem. Maybe use the same sentence we said before, that there is no value to wisdom and understanding and counsel and weight against the honor of God. Shaneatam, there is a case of unattended corpse is different. Why? Dichtiv la'achoto. There is a concept that it's called Dichtiv la'achoto, because it's written on his sister Veligmar minei. So let's derive from here, because if we generalize the verse that human dignities override even the Torah prohibition. So he said Sheva al taseh shani. Sheva al taseh is different. Few points. What does that mean? Veligmar minei. Let's just derive from this case. So ligmar minei, the logical flow, the discussion is as follows. The halacha concerning the loss of object constitute a challenge to the principle that preventing desecration of God's name override concern of human dignity. So it's two stages. And one stage is the Gemarah cited the Braita, that the example that contradict the principle. So then the Gemarah reject the challenge, that they said that unique circumstance they changed the case of the Braita. Then you have the second stage that is more general. So we said that it's a one clear case. So all this idea is answered by saying Sheva al taseh shani. Sheva al taseh shani, sit and refrain from action. It's different. What does that mean? Sheva al taseh shani. So if you have a met mitzvah and you cannot take care of the Passover offering, you have to pick and choose what to do. So let's say if you're focusing on the dead, so you pass the time of Korban Pesach, bringing the sacrificial offering, it's too late. So it's called Shev ve'al taseh. Merely sit and refrain from performing the mitzvah is different than actively transgressing the Torah prohibition. So who can say that? Rabbanan, the sages, can say that, even in Doraita, even something in the Torah. So for example, if you walk and you have a kilaim, you have a woolen linen, so that's kvod habriot. It cannot override the biblical. And I would like to share with you, usually we don't do this Rashi, but I want to focus for a second on this Rashi before we conclude this class of Sheva al taseh shani. Rashi said several important things. He said, Dvarim rabim etiru la'akor dvar Torah mipnei siyag u'mipnei kvod habriot. 2 lines from the top of the page. There are many things allowed to do, even in a sense, the sages override the Torah in human dignity. Which means, give you an example. This is here, כגון תקיעת שופר ולולב ושבת וסדין בציצית. So the great Rav Samson Hirsch, he was invited to one of the Reform temple. In those days in Germany, they have services on Sundays, and they warn him in advance he should not speak about Shabbat, etc. So it was a time like now, before Shoshana, and he talked for an hour and a half. And in his speech was the whole idea that before we blow the shofar, there are 10 explanations of the whole idea of shofar. And he explained and elaborate of 10 explanations, that is bring a zchut, bring merit before the day of judgment. But he said with all these 10 different explanations, if Rosh Hashanah occurred on Shabbat, and you need to blow the shofar, you shouldn't blow the shofar. Why? Because if someone who's not educated and he's not learning all the idea of shofar involved, and all of a sudden it's Rosh Hashanah and he needs to learn, so he carried the lulav on Rosh Hashanah, he carried it to someone expert, and he carried 4 amot in Shut Rabim, which is a violation of Torah law. So you lose all the 10 explanation in against of Chilul Shabbat, the secretion of Shabbat. It's above all the other things. So the same apply here. It said about lulav, carrying the 4 species in the time of Beit HaMikdash. This is Rabbanan, and they say they can annul the Oraita, they can superride the Oraita, levatel b'sheva al ta'aseh, which means even the Torah said you should do it, in the Beit HaMikdash they did lulav. But since it's an issue of some people who carry, so the Rabbanan put the same he said further on. Vesadin betzitzit. Sadin betzitzit, imagine it's lunchtime, cold winter, and you take a blanket and you put it around you and you wrap it. So you said that this blanket have 4 corners, so a person feel cold, he cover himself with this blanket, it's considering part of his garment, right? So the rabbi said no, even the Torah require us around the garments to put the 4 fringes, the tzitzit, but ksut laila, that the person can mix between the garments and the blanket. So in order to avoid it, sheva al ta'aseh adif. So in a sense, you do it only on the garments that you're wearing, but not anything else. So here we see Rashi add to that, and he said, ודכבתי וטובה ביבמות, אבל מעיקר בידיים לא, והלובש כליים או קרוב במעשה ממש, הוא לובשו וטומאת גופי שתורה לכהן ולנזיר לטמא למת מצווה, דקה מעקר בידיים מפני כבוד הבריות, דשלב שבע אל תעשהו. היינו, תמה, דלא גמרינן מייתם. So he said it's regarding to met mitzvah, the Kohen cannot be contaminated because the Torah does not speak about the 7 immediate family. The same applied to Nazir. So basically the Sheva Al Taseh is different. Tosefta here, again I give you the abbreviation, he said that you cannot learn Nazir from Tuma because the Nazir can change, Nazirite can change his situation. The same applied Tuma and Kohen. That's a tziburi, that is a public, that is a personal. I suggested that you study the Tosefta separately. So to wrap up, I would like to share with you 4 halachot that what we study today in this page 19. We study several halachot. Let's go over them just as a point of ending. Those standing in a row, ha'omdim b'shua, standing in a row to give a word of comfort to the dead. So the Rambam in Sefer Ahava, in Ilchot Kriyat Shema, number 4, he said, the same with Shulchan Aruch, excuse me, thank you, said that those who in interior row, they are facing face to face the mourner, they exempting from reciting Shema, but those who are in exterior row, who is not face to face with mourners, they the same as the Mishnah and Tosefta said, they need to say the Shema. Regarding to someone who find kilaim, who has discovered a diverse kind of kilaim in his garment. So the halachai I'm reading to you from Shulchan Aruch Yodea 303. They said one who discovered a mixture of wool and linen prohibited by Torah law in the garments of another person must remove the garments from him. So he must do so even if they are marketable, with no concern of the effort of his dignity, even if the individual is questioned was his teacher, as the dignity of a rabbi does not override the dignity of heaven. But if the mixture was only prohibited by rabbinic law, he may wait until the person wearing the garment return home, and then remove it for him. As that's the Gemarah conclusion, that rabbinic decree do not override human dignity. Also, if the individual have worn the garment unwittingly, even the mixture was prohibited by Torah law, the human dignity take precedence, and he should not remove the garment from him, and that was the word of the Tur. Now, another important halacha is the jump over coughing of the deceased. We discussed it earlier, that what about the Kohen? So this is Rambam Sefer Shoftim Ilchot Avel, chapter 3. He said, a Kohen מדלג על הארונות, we jump over the coffin of the deceased, priest permitted to run to greet the kings of Israel and disregard rabbinic decree of impurity, whether or not this allowance applies to other kings as well. So you have to see other Rambam and Magen Avraham. That's a different story, but the whole idea that human dignity it's not applied here. Another thing is the whole הלכה, if היה כהן והוא בבית הקברות או זקן ונע לפי כבודו או שהייתה מלאכו מרובס או שולחנו וכוחו של משפט, in few places 27, 26 he said as follow: a Kohen, a priest, who sees a lost object in a cemetery is not obligated to tend to its return, or an elderly person for whom it is undignified to handle an object of that kind, if it belongs to him, it's similarly exempt. The halacha also applied to the mitzvah to assist owner to unload an animal that collapsed under its burden. And they said, or shaita melachto meruba. We said that someone who, like we said about the jury person, or someone who earned a high salary, so that so he's concerned that if he's so much involved with returning the object that he loses money. So this, if he stipulated before the court that he will be reimbursed for any loss of wages, he is obligated to return the lost object. If, however, the no court before which he could make the stipulation, his wages take precedence, which means that his wages is more important than